Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. We have made it through 12 rounds of the 2025 AFL season, 12 and 3/4 if you count opening round. That gives us as close to a baker's dozen as we can probably get without actually getting it. Thanks, Tropical Cyclone Alfred. You've given us a way to slightly change this opening gambit from last year, so I don't actually have to think of something new. That worked out really well, because I've had the same shtick for a year and a half. Shtick for a year and a half. In many ways, much like the AFL themselves like to do.
Yeah, it's your brand, Jesse. You got to hold.
They just change things entirely.
Just hold on to your brand, Jesse. That's what you do. That's what people know you for. The 13 and 3/4 guy.
Well, what's going to happen when we get rid of opening round per all my angry emails?
That's very.
I'm going to stop sending them because I don't have to think of something new, and we don't do that here.
No, well, think of something new.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
We just thought, no one else has ever done a football podcast before. Ever. The first one.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the first, you're the best. Unfortunately, we're not the first bit of that. Someone might think we're the second one of that. Maybe. It depends. Well, you don't know unless you're actually listening. And how do you do that, Liam? You do it by tuning in on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify if you're a podcasting preferring person. If you prefer the visual element, hello, visual element people. We are here on YouTube. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on our topics of conversation as the episode progresses. You can also catch us on Instagram at cmperfect_AFL. Liam.
Yes.
We're almost in the bye rounds. Well, we are in the
bye rounds.
The bumpy misery that is the bye rounds. How are you doing? What are your thoughts on the round we just saw before we progress on?
I think we're. I think a few weeks ago we were talking about how the season is a clear kind of 8, and then there's the rest. I think after this round, that's probably wrong. I think maybe there's quite a few in that clump. The clumps are back that are going to be fighting for that because I don't know. Some teams are starting to fall away a little bit. Some teams are getting some good form. Some teams are still confusing. Status quo. But no, it was an interesting round of football, Jesse. And I must admit, I kind of enjoy the abridged rounds. A few less games for us to pay attention to and watch, which is nice. Don't you think so?
Well, see, it sounds good, but then you just get more dribble about the same topics over and over again. And things get really tiring. Like, hey, guys, did you know that Bailey Smith and Harley Reid might match up on each other? That's exciting.
Well,
that's really exciting.
It was exciting on the night too, Jesse, was it not? We'll talk about the games later, though. Bring that microphone just a bit closer to your gob, my friend. Attaboy. Done. Good man. But no, we'll talk about the games later in our games recap as we usually do. But as is tradition now on the CM Perfect podcast, I nearly did it again. We are going to dive into something quite interesting, Jesse. Quite interesting. Now, obviously, a couple of weeks ago we had the Ross Lyon comments come out. The Nepo babies, Gold Coast Suns, and this got your little brain thinking. I shouldn't say little brain. That's not very nice.
Technically, if I was big brain, I'd be dumber. Isn't that how it works? So you almost complimented me.
Smooth brain Jesse idea coming up.
That's a good one. You know what? Just stop talking about my brain, and then you can have your little gambits. Off you go.
Well, we're talking about academy recruits and whatnot today, like Shadow Brain. There we go. There's a brain we can bring up. Well done. Go me. But just take it away. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, I wanted to talk about two elements of the St Kilda comment, and I want to talk about St Kilda more generally, which is going to be part 2 of this conversation. But first of all, let's start by setting the scene with the academy. So we're specifically talking about Northern Academies for this first part. So Father, Son, and Next Gen are not included in this part of the conversation. So take that out of your brain, which I'm sure is very intellectual if you're listening to this, and put it to one side for now. We're just focusing on the Northern Academies. So the Northern Academies are an initiative the AFL has worked with the 4 Northern clubs, that being Gold Coast, Brisbane, GWS, and Sydney, to essentially generate talent from these rugby states. So not traditional AFL markets, traditionally very much rugby-centric. So it's a matter of getting prospects for the future into the system and giving them a professional environment to do so, an elite environment to do so. Now, straight away, Liam, before we go into how the 4 clubs have fared, I cannot stress enough how important these academies are and how narrow-minded some of the takes are about the clubs getting access to these players.
Mm.
Because there are millions invested every season into this. I know Sydney have invested millions, or invest at least over $1 million a season, and that's been going for 15 years, into their academy and getting that structure right. So you're looking at setting up clinics. And it's not just 16, 17, 18-year-olds. You're talking down to ages like 10. I think some of the Northern Academies have set up. So you're coaching younger kids coming into their young adult years for 8 years in some cases. That is a significant time and financial expense. Now, obviously, some of that cost is borne by the parents, and that's probably another conversation in and of itself. But in terms of the clubs, they're investing time and money into developing these kids as footballers and also people. You know, sporting clubs at that age are often where teenagers are. It becomes a significant sense of identity for them. So to say that the Northern Academies, well, there should be less concessions, I really don't agree with that. And I'll get your take on this in a second, Liam, but my take is very simple. If you're asking or expecting clubs to spend millions on this, they should have the right to reap those rewards. Taking that or restricting that away from the clubs won't affect next year's draft pool or the year after's draft pool, but you can be damn sure as we head into that next decade, there would be flow-on effects. Liam, can I get your thoughts on that? Do you think it's fair that the Northern clubs do have that first access to their players?
I think of course it's fair. I mean, like you said, not even just the financial, but the emotional investment they're putting into those players. It would stand to reason that they get the first dibs on that player. So if they so choose to, obviously it's a two-way street, right? I'm assuming, kind of, but you know they would feel a sense of belonging to that community because you've come up through the ranks, and it would make sense to me that first dibs would go to the team or to the club that has put in that time, those finances, and that effort to get that kid up to scratch in both the men's and the women's game.
Yeah. And that is an important point too, that both AFL and AFLW Academy exist. For the purpose of this conversation, given it came from Ross Lyon and everyone's favourite communicator, is probably the nicest word I can call him, Andrew Bassett, we're going to stick with the men's side for this episode. Maybe we can do a women's deep dive when the AFLW season's going. If you'd like that, let us know.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, no, I think it's only fair. It stands to reason that it would be a logical step or logical next step in that process for that team that has put that time in to actually be the ones to take that player. Now, I'm not too sure if this is jumping ahead, but is the main issue that Old Mate Bassett has is that all the teams can't dip their finger into that pot if they want to get that player? Is that what the main issue is?
Well, the issue from a St Kilda perspective, and I understand this is thought of in to a lesser degree, but also very much around other Victorian clubs, is they don't feel it's fair that the draft is being, quote, compromised by the Gold Coast Football Club, the Brisbane Football Club, the Giants and the Suns having access to these top players. It specifically seems to be targeted at those first two, Brisbane and Gold Coast, because they have had a lot of higher academy and father-son picks. Now, it is very important to separate those two. Now, it can cross over. We'll talk about Jasper Fletcher in a minute, but he is both. I believe the only player to meet that distinction of being both a father-son and an academy prospect. But they are very different things. Look at Gold Coast is a great example here, and we'll come to this again in a little bit. But Leo Lombard, who debuted for the Suns on Saturday against Fremantle, he is an academy graduate of theirs. He's a lifelong Suns fan. Now, we don't get to say that very often because the Suns have been around for 14 years. So straight away, even if Leo Lombard doesn't graduate to play a game for the Suns, which he obviously has now, doesn't go on to have a great career, which I really think he will, that's a success already, because you're getting kids into those reddy orange, blood orange, those colours. They're wearing them, and that's nice.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to get my head around. So like the academies pick people from, or kids from the area they're from, or can they go out and scour the country and be like, hey, you should come on.
They have designated talent zones. I mean, look, theoretically they could do that. Like, there's probably nothing to really stop them from doing that, but to my knowledge, that hasn't happened. In fact, in some situations, it's gone the other way. the we'll see. I think it's Brisbane. Riled is technically a Brisbane Academy graduate, but he was drafted from East Fremantle in the Waffle.
Interesting.
So he actually left the system in that other direction. So if it can go one way, logic would dictate it can go the other.
Okay.
But a lot of the kids that I checked for this piece were from legitimate academy areas.
Okay. So if they've got a pool, if they've got a zone that they have to stick within, then I don't see how there could be an argument that it's unfair that they have this capacity to do this. Because I'm not mistaken, obviously, they're not the only 4 clubs with academies. Other clubs have academies. Do all clubs have academies?
All clubs have next-gen academies, which is your Indigenous and multicultural background players.
Okay.
Only the Northern clubs have this specific type of academy that gives them a direct pipeline access. So that's the disagreement that St Kilda have. For the record, I would be totally open with all 18 clubs getting this and actually going down that reward for effort matrix. If you develop them, you play them.
Yeah.
That has worked in the past, back when it was state league competitions ruling the roost, so your Waffle, your Sandful, your VFL, that system was in place in broad strokes. I mean, even in the Waffle now, the junior zone still exists. East Fremantle's is the strongest. It's been a very powerful zone for many years now. It's got that inner southern suburb zone. It's got Geraldton, which has been a massive pipeline of talent at both Waffle and AFL level. That system works. So that's maybe a conversation closer to draft night. Should we actually encourage this more? I believe yes. Mm-hmm. That is my take. Reward the clubs for long-term development. But we'll stick with what we have now. So St Kilda's main gripe is, well, the draft is compromised and we can't draft who we want because you get basically unrestricted access. Leo Lombard was a particular sticking point. They wanted him. Gold Coast matched the bid. They kept him. So let's look at that in a broader sense. So Liam has got some graphics now for us. It's like a Microsoft Teams presentation. If you're not on the YouTube version, don't stress. It's okay. We will verbalize this. If you are on the YouTube version, look, you can see it. How good is that? Unless you're doing like the dishes or something in the background. In which case, luckily, we're still verbalizing it. The audio doesn't change. Let's do the two northern clubs first. We'll do the Queensland-based clubs. So keep in mind as well, Gold Coast have Northern Territory too. I think this is straight away a good thing, including the Territory and the Suns bracket. That's their home away from home. The Northern Territory has been a good talent pipeline in the past, and it encourages investment in the Territory's football system. I only see a positive in that. Lots of opinions around this. Let's start with the facts. Brisbane have 16 academy graduates currently on AFL lists. I believe 9 of those are on Brisbane's list, and we're talking some very good players in there. So Harris Andrew, who's on screen, Eric Hipwood, Jasper Fletcher, who straddles that line of being father, son, and academy. Haven't had someone do father, son, academy next gen yet. Don't know when that will happen. That'd be the ultimate St Kilda nightmare. The try-compromise. They're not going to like that at all, are they?
No, they wouldn't at all.
No. And there's some depth players sprinkled in there as well. Jack Payne is another example who's, in their best 22 now, but probably isn't going to be setting the world on fire. As you've got in that little text box there, Len, some players that haven't benefited the Lions. Tell me a bit about them.
So there's quite a big set of names here. Mabior Chol, who's obviously he's bounced around the different clubs, but he's now found a good home at Hawthorn. He's looking very, very strong. Alir, obviously one of the best defenders, or has been at times best defenders in the competition. Corey Wagner, he's over at Fremantle now. Nice things to say about Corey sometimes. Samson Ryan and Patrick Snell, who's yet to debut. But these are all players, Jesse, that have come through the academy and have just been shipped off to somewhere else.
They just get drafted or otherwise into the system.
Oh, so it can happen. So it can happen.
It absolutely can happen. There is you aren't guaranteed. You have to bid for them. So the Lions may have looked at a player like, Alito is a little bit different because he actually left the academy early, but he still is an academy graduate for the Lions. We can't change the goalposts based on what we want to suit the argument. But a guy like Corey Wagner, and I can't say the Lions are wrong with this, they look at him and say, yeah, we're okay. Go away, please. And then gets drafted, and he's bad at North, he's bad at Melbourne, and then Fremantle pick him up, and he's okay.
He had an okay game on the weekend.
He did. He's okay.
He's okay.
So 16 grads, that's honestly not that big of a number for 10 plus years of a Northern Academy. Like, it's not bad, and it's definitely helped the Lions. They've gotten Andrew, Hipwood, they've gotten some very good players through that way. Keep in mind, not the Ashcroft boys. That's a very important distinction. They played their junior footy in Victoria. They are not academy graduates. They are father-sons. And when when Marcus played 300 plus games, that seems kind of fair.
Yeah.
So that's the Lions. As for the Suns, 17 graduates. So keep in mind, it's been the Suns that have been the most targeted club, I would say, for this academy. Because people seem to get really cross that the Suns have this academy and that it's favouritism and it's desperation from the AFL to make it work. And look, while I don't think that second point is entirely wrong in principle, the AFL obviously want the Suns to work. Academies do assist these teams in holding on to and developing talent. I think it's a bit of a jump because if I go through some of the names here that are academy graduates currently on the Suns list, Connor Buderick, who's out at the moment, but is a solid defender. Sam Closey, Alex Davies in and out. You got Caleb and Will Graham, Joel Jeffrey, Lloyd Johnson, Ethan Reid, Jake Rogers, Malcolm Roses Jr., Bodie Euland, Jed Walter, Lockie Weller, who they didn't take. Fremantle took Lockie Weller as a draft pick, and then he just ended up back in the Suns via a trade. That's an important distinction here when we're talking about how unfair the system is.
Yeah.
Lockie Goulburn and Leo Lombard. Look, without being too disrespectful, not even half those names are guaranteed best 22. And look, that comes with the key caveat. The Suns are very good now.
Yeah.
But that's not... There's a lot of depth in that list that we just talked. There's not a lot of superstar power.
No, there's not. I mean, there's probably none, to be honest. There's not... Like, there's some good players in there.
I'll give Bodie Euland his flowers.
Yeah, Bodie Euland say he's having a great year. And, like, I've heard Chloe's name pop up a few times through the games this year. But, yeah, I mean, Alex Davies, has he played this year? I feel like he's a name from the past. He hasn't really got any games. So, unlike your Hipwoods, your
Harris Andrew, Liam.
Harris Andrews. Look, this happens sometimes, an old man. Like, they're names that stick out. Like, if they're on the team, you're like, oh, shit, I got to play against Hipwood. I got to play against Andrews this week. You wouldn't necessarily say that about any of the Suns just yet. Maybe in the future, but just yet.
And keep in mind, no father sons for the Suns either. So they are solely reliant in terms of the system. Look, let's pause very quickly here, just for a 5-second interval, and talk about St Kilda here, because St Kilda get very cross about father sons for the simple reason they haven't had any good ones. They have been in the VFL AFL for the same amount of time as Collingwood, Carlton, Essendon. It is not the fault of the system that they can't produce father-son prospects. In fact, they've passed on father-son prospects. So they have a significant competitive advantage over the Suns in that regard. They don't take it. Well, they haven't been able to take it. So tough.
Yeah.
Let's talk the two southern northern clubs as we creep closer to Melbourne. So keep in mind as well with the Giants, they hold the ACT zone as well, much like the Suns hold the Northern Territory zone. That's been pretty decent for the Giants. And it's a bit of a weird one, the ACT, because you do get a bit of more of a mix of football-minded people. Obviously, Canberra being a very transient town in nature, you do get a very healthy mix, as seen by the crowds at Manuka on a frequent basis. So 29 current AFL-listed academy graduates from the Giants. That's a huge number when we compare that to
it's huge.
Up north. Of those 29, though, only 9 are currently on the Giants list, with 3 yet to debut. And Liam, you saw the list. I'm not going to make you go through it because it's a bit of it without notice, but you saw the list when I sent it through when I was making my notes. In recent years, there's not been a lot of high-end talent that's come through the academy. Tom Green's 2019 is an obvious one, but this side of 2019, it's not set the world on fire.
No, it hasn't. But I think it's interesting to note though with the Giants, and I think I've written there on the graphic the feeder club. I mean, 29 of them and 9 only of the Giants still. I've always said this. People seem to take them from the Giants all the time. It's like pluck them. Obviously, not all of them are going to be academy talents, but of 29, for only 9 to still be there would suggest that there's a bit of plucking going on, and a bit of ruling the roost. But no, I mean, but is that the point of the academy though, Jesse? Is the point to get a huge name out of it, or is it the point just to develop the footy? Because I guess that's what's the goal. You just want to get a good player who may turn into a superstar, because you don't know who the superstar is going to be, right? You can bring all these people up through the academies, and they're playing good footy, they're showing some promise. You put them into the main stage, and it's not going to happen immediately. It didn't happen immediately for Hipwood. He's had some bad years himself as well. So sure, the Giants list might not be full of megastars, but is that a problem? Is that an issue, or is that just a?
I don't think it's an issue. I think you almost got to look at that from two separate angles. I think the AFL would probably want the less megastars, more talent as a whole, because you're looking at a 20th team probably within a decade at this point. Assuming Tassie gets over the line, we're probably looking at a 20th team by 2035, potentially in Canberra. So that they're going to want a deeper talent pool. And that also has knock-on effects too. State League footy benefits greatly from this eventually as well, because,
true.
I mean, right now, talk about the zonal model in the waffle. That works for clubs like Fremantle. It's WA Day, Derby Day today.
You're very excited, Jesse.
Very excited up the Sharks. But that model works for Fremantle. The players develop through their junior clubs, go to development squads, build up through 18s to Colts, and then either consider, look, if they're good enough, go to the AFL, maybe stay in the waffle, or go to amateurs. And that helps the entire system. So that works in that regard. But from a club perspective, you're going to want that higher end talent, which is probably where we'll segue into Sydney for this, because Sydney don't actually publish their list of academy graduates. And given the ambiguity around what actually constitutes an academy graduate, I haven't given us an exact number for this, just because interpretations have been ever so slightly different between clubs when going through this research. So we've left it as a mysterious number, but gee, there's some high-end talent here. So Heaney, Goulden, Mills, they are as positive as you can get. That's three very valuable parts of a admittedly quite bad Swans team now, but three very valuable parts of a team that made it to 2 grand finals, pushed the club right to the edge of premiership glory.
Yep. No, 100%, and that's the I wonder why the Swans don't publish it. Is it just a case of it doesn't matter, or is it just a case of there's too many? Is it a case of just advertise the good ones? Just these are what we can do.
It's easier to advertise the high end talent, isn't it? Look at all these great players we have. Well,
especially if you got them.
Well, it's a success story. I mean, you can't argue. I mean, Isaac Heaney's in a Colgate ad. So that is no, but you know what I'm saying? In terms of marketability, it's what I mean. Errol Goulden's been talked about in the breath of being a Brownlow contender. Callum Mills is a player that is deeply valuable to the Swans. Maybe doesn't get the flowers of the other two, but is very much considered a vital leader and figure of the club. We'll talk about this now as a segue into St Kilda, but you're talking 16 at Brisbane, 17 at the Suns, 29 at the Giants. We're going to assume double digits pretty safely for the Swans too, because they have done a decent job with their talent.
Yeah,
that's a lot of players that we don't have any guarantees would have made it into the AFL system, or even considered playing AFL as a sport, or Australian rules as a sport. So straight away, it is important to recognise how valuable this is. It is very easy to say, well, why doesn't the AFL just run this? And that's fine, but you've got to remember, motivation is a key thing here. The AFL want to grow the Northern Academy. The 4 Northern clubs want to win a premiership. There is a much bigger incentive for the Northern clubs as silos to target elite talent pathways than there is for the AFLs to take a scattergun approach. So, to me, I think the Northern Academy is up there with one of the best inventions in the AFL in the 21st century. I think you can absolutely look at the success of the players we've just gone through or mentioned and say this has been a demonstrable success for the AFL and for Australian rules football as a whole, because like we said before, it doesn't just stop at the highest tip of the iceberg. It goes all the way down through your state leagues, through your amateurs, through having kids support these new clubs, through having the parents of the kids say, oh, look, my son now plays in the Giants Academy. See you, North Melbourne. Into the bin. I'm now a Giants supporter. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
though?
I do.
It's such a valuable thing to have, and it gives these clubs identities, because it's important to remember the VFL had zones once upon a time too.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, St Kilda's was the least producing talent one within that. So great success record there. But that also helped embed loyalty, tribalism, passion within not only players, but also suburbs.
Yeah.
You know, there is a reason that Footscray, Seddon, that area through the western suburbs is firmly Bulldogs. You know, up towards Tullamarine, that's your Bombers' heartland. Down towards Box Hill, that's Hawthorn's area. And for St Kilda, they've got that inner eastern shelf around Moorabbin, St Kilda itself, through that little area close to the beaches. It is such a vital part of football to have identity. Mm-hmm. And these academies significantly bolster that within their zones. Just because you don't reap the benefits doesn't mean you get to complain about it. But Liam,
yes,
I hear you ask. Not every player that has gone through an academy, as you just pointed out so eloquently, Jesse, not every player from the academies has remained at their AFL Academy graduating club. And to that I say, Liam, you are correct. So shall we move to the next slide and have a look at where some of these players have ended up?
Took the words right out.
Great idea.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Jesse. All right, let's go to the next slide for you here. Now, the Seagull Saints. Now, I must admit, Jesse, when you asked me to make this graphic, I had no idea what you meant by Seagull Saints. Please tell me.
So, St Kilda, for all their disdain of father-sons, next-gen academies and northern academies, have done pretty well out of everyone else's work. Now, this graphic does include next-gen players as well, as seen by Fremantle, West Coast and Adelaide appearing there. It also includes St Kilda's very own next-gen academy players. In fact, St Kilda, as of 2023, were the third most successful next-gen academy by production of players.
Okay.
Within their own zone. So that's pretty good. Go Saints. But, so St Kilda hate the Northern Academies, right? They disdain them. Absolutely don't want to borrow them. So that's great. So in that case, you can give back your club captain, Jack Steele, because he's a Giants Academy graduate from country New South Wales, who we don't have any guarantees would have made it close to the AFL system if it wasn't for the Giants Academy.
Good point.
Dougal Howard, a best 22 defender, same story. Via Port Adelaide, so didn't go within the Giants system, went to Port, ended up here. Cooper Sharman, a draft pick of St Kilda's. They'll be very pleased with that because, you know, we can talk about the Saints draft record until the cows come home. It's not very good. But hey, they did well out of that. Got a best 22 forward off the Giants Academies. Work. Next gen players. Liam Henry, probably I believe the highest draft pick of a next gen player out of Western Australia. Best 22 being a top 10 draft pick out of Fremantle when he was taken. He pursued a move to St Kilda at the end of 2023 and is there now. Lance Collard, who has flickered in and out of that first team as well. West Coast Next Gen Academy graduate. And Isaac Keeler, we put him as a prospect. He had a very good game on Sunday. I did this listing on Sunday morning prior to the St Kilda Melbourne game in Alice. He is, probably getting very close to that best 22 bracket now. He did not nominate via Adelaide for the draft, but he did come through their Next Gen Academy system. Not to mention Marcus Windhager and Mitch Owens, two very good success stories from St Kilda's Academy. Liam,
yes,
a club that hates how compromised the draft is.
Yeah,
that's not a bad haul.
That's not a bad haul at all. It's not a bad haul at all. Like the names on there is like, Jack Steele, and I didn't know about this about Jack Steele either. Like I didn't know that he'd come from a country town, New South Wales, and without all that, there might not be a Jack Steele in the AFL at all. So it kind of
Zach Jones might be the captain. I don't even want to put that into a fan's head. That's terrifying.
But it's interesting though, like to see or to find out where this kind of vitriol has come from in relation to this. Especially when you look at a list like this, which I'm sure is not all inclusive. There might be some stuff going on in the future as well. But those are some big names. And
that's 6 of their best 22, arguably 7 based on the way Keeler played last week. I mean, Windhager and Owens, they're walk-ins. Steele obviously is a walk-in. I'd say Howard is a walk-in. Henry, he's been in and out a bit, but I think on his best, he is absolutely best 22, especially with Brad Hill getting older.
Stay healthy, he can, for sure.
Yeah. And Sharman, I think, is cementing himself in that range as well. So, very odd, this little rant from St Kilda. I think St Kilda are going very much through their cantankerous teenage phase right now. They've got a bit of twisted sister going on. We're not going to take it. It's everyone else's fault but ours that we can't draft. We saw Petrarca and Bond and thought, no thanks, let's take average players instead.
But what is it though? What is it though, Jesse? Like, what is it? Just a case of they have these little trigger points, these triggering moments, like not getting Leo Lombard that kind of just set them off. Like, what is it? Is that the only reason that would cause old mate Ross Lyon to say that they're nepo babies?
Well, the comments are very clearly from Andrew Bassett. Whether Ross holds that opinion separately, I'm not sure. But there has been a very deliberate and conscious push from the St Kilda executive to make it very clear that they believe that father, son, and academy should be watered down basically to the point of uselessness. And it's pretty clear when you look at this long term that everyone benefits from. I mean, let's talk next gen briefly, right? There is a very clear directive from AFL House. They want Indigenous participation to both stabilise and then increase. That is clear. I don't think anyone's going to argue against that. Next gen academies are a vital way for all 18 clubs to promote and develop Indigenous and multicultural players through. Keep in mind, while we do have 3 non-Victorian clubs there on our list of Next Gen Academy graduates, just because that's how the cookie crumbled. St Kilda have 2 of themselves. You look at Essendon, they got Isaac Kako as a multicultural background player through. Dogs with Jamari Ugelhagen. Now, that caused a lot of angst at the time because, well, he's the first pick. That's not really fair. And that did change things. Now, I'm not saying we'll have to go all in on this, but I'm a big believer in reward for effort. So taking away the ability for clubs to benefit off a directive the AFL wants and is keen to see expanding, I don't think that's the right approach. And it just, when you look at St Kilda's track record, it does seem like a very big deflection game here. St Kilda have been bad for 15 years now. They've been worse than bad for significant chunks of that time. They have failed time and time again to attract players via free agency and trades. They have failed time and time again to draft the right players. Now, you can look at that and say, well, they wanted Leo Lombard. They didn't get him. That's not fair. And I can understand where St Kilda fans come from that. You want access to that talent. However, when you look at the trickle-down effects that happen, that just requires good list management in time.
Yeah.
You look at those names on that list, that is a very decent spine to start building a team from directly off the back of other clubs' hard work.
It's very strange. It's very strange. Like, I almost wonder what it is that they want instead. They just want the regular old, the draft system back. They just want to be able to go out themselves to the middle of country town, Victoria, New South Wales, and be like, "Hey, look, he looks pretty good. Let's draft him in." Like,
But they don't do that, because I actually went on St Kilda's website to give them the benefit of the doubt and had a bit of a poke around. On the Saints website to have a bit of a look, get a bit of understanding about where their elite talent pathways are being focused. Now, the first problem with that is their elite talent pathway website or web page and associated news hasn't been updated since the end of 2023.
Right.
Not great. I tried to get to their Next Gen Academy page on their website and got a 404.
Good.
So
nice.
A lot of this is very much a case of we don't want to get on board, so we're just going to throw our life raft over the boat and just hope for the best.
And complain about it.
Yes, and because it's a conspiracy against them, don't you understand? It's actually quite embarrassing, and I feel sorry for St Kilda fans having to listen to this rhetoric, because as someone who's a Fremantle supporter, I would like nothing more than my team to be good. And time and time again, the executive of my football club has let me down with terrible decisions in both player and personnel decision-making. Time and time again.
Sure.
But now to be getting this rhetoric that it's everyone else's fault but the clubs. I mean, Next Gen Academies aren't the reason you chose Billings over Bontempelli.
Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with that. You know, Next Gen Academies aren't the reason, or Northern Academies aren't the reason that every free agent, except maybe Tom DeConing now, who you make an offer to, scoffs and re-signs with their club. The Finn Callum approach. Like, scoffs and goes straight back and signs at the other end. You know, this rhetoric, when you're getting 13,000 people in a 60,000 capacity stadium, is ridiculous. This rhetoric, when you are directly benefiting off the hard work of other clubs, is embarrassing. Mm-hmm. Your quick whitewashing of history to ignore the fact, or certainly sweeping under the rug the history, that you have managed to achieve your club captain and significant best 22 players from Northern Academies and Next Gen Academies, while screaming until the cows come home how unfair they are, is embarrassing.
Yeah, it's beggars belief. Like, we always come on here, Jesse, like we say, you're very knowledgeable. I'm just the idiot who comes on from the ride. But this teaches me a lot as well. Like, not just from a sense of, like, you hear Bassett, you hear the Ross Lyon nepo baby remarks, and you go, well, that's a bit of a news story. What's he talking about here? This is a really interesting deep dive into what they've actually gained from these things that they're so against. So it's been very, very eye opening, very interesting. I don't know what they want.
One last point I will make on this, just to tie us all up before we go and talk about the round that was.
Sure.
I get the sense people only cared now because the Suns are starting to look good and they've got another decent haul coming in from 2025. And they do. They've got Zeke Euland, who, you know, could genuinely be a number one draft pick coming out of this academy, obviously related to Bodie. They've got a couple of really high-quality top 10, top 15 prospects. So, yeah, sure. People are going to take more notice of that when that's going on. But no one was complaining when Jake Rogers ended up at the Suns via their academy. No one cared when Lockie Goldman did. No. Fremantle directly benefited off Lockie Weller's time through the... He's a local Gold Coast boy, Lockie Weller. So he came through the system at the Suns, got drafted by Fremantle, ended up going back because, you know, go-home factor. But other clubs can directly benefit. So St Kilda, while throwing their toys out of the pram, are ignoring the significant problems internally within their football club, and also ignoring the much bigger picture of the fact that when these northern clubs are winning by way of talent development, so is everyone else.
Absolutely. No, it's a good one, Jesse. Nice work. I enjoyed that. I learned. And learning is fun. And learning is good. But what are your thoughts, everybody listening? Saints fans or otherwise, your thoughts on the Nepo Baby comments, the academies, should they exist, should they not? I'm with Jesse. I think they should stick around because they're pretty gosh darn good. All right. Anything else, Jesse, before we head on to the games?
I think it's time to talk round 12.